Now, over the years, I've featured loads of British manufacturers on the show, like Triumph, Norton, Brough Superior, etc. But whatever happened to Hesketh?
The story revolves around the third Earl of Hesketh, the flamboyant aristocrat whose team, Hesketh Racing, gave James Hunt his first Grand Prix win. To find out how he got into motorbikes, I've been joined by two stalwarts of the Owners Club, David and Dave.
When his lordship had finished with the F1 car, his mate Bubbles Horsley suggested to him, how's about using these facilities to build a nice new motorbike?
I was going to say, it sounds like it was very gentlemanly. And well, why didn't you start a British motorcycle band, dear boy?
Yes.
They're marvellous.
That's
Over drinks, of course.
Oh, of course, probably over a light pim.
Hesketh hired top engineer Mick Broom, quickly developed a series of prototypes, and in April 1980 gave the bike its first public outing.
The press didn't like it one bit.
Didn't they?
And
Why
that came
not?
as a surprise, did it?
Yeah, well, I think so. Did it come as a surprise to Lord Hesketh?
I would suspect he suspected it was going to happen because it was well underdeveloped.
A year later, they relaunched with a much improved bike.
You know, the instrument cluster's different, the headlamp nacelle is different, the tank shape is different, the seat is different, the swing arm is narrower, the front wheel's bigger. The engine, well, I could go on for hours.
Lord Hesketh was so pleased with his new sled that he included a signed letter for all new customers, commending a bike that was built by individuals for individuals. The press, however, still hated it.
In that redesign, they designed in some new faults. Just to keep people on their toes, because the people they employed to design the production bikes didn't know the whole story. So the guy who designed the pistons didn't know the engine rotated backwards, so he got the thrust face the wrong way. So that's why they rattled.
Hesketh built roughly 200 bikes, but by 1982, the company was floundering.
Did Lord Hesketh have a little bit of wedge, dear boy, just to carry us through these hard times?
It was delayed 6 months while they reworked it, and by that time he'd run out of money. And the shareholders had run out of money, and sadly it folded.
At the time, Hesketh was dismissed as another great British heroic failure, but over the years, it's developed a small but dedicated following. But is it an ugly duckling, or in fact, a beautiful swan?
I've seen them over the years. I've looked at them from different angles and I've thought, oh, do I like it? Oh, do I don't? But the bottom line is, if you haven't ridden it, I don't think you really can pass an opinion.
So here we go. The V1000 weighs in at 540 pounds, so it's more like a gouty old baron than a sprightly young commoner. But all that weight gives it a real sense of solidity, even if it's not exactly nimble. You do ride tall on this bike, but if you're looking for a cruiser rather than a racer, that's not such a problem.
Blimey, I have to say, that is a revelation. I've looked at these motorcycles since the 80s and thought, I don't know why you would have actually built one of these things. But now I'm beginning to understand. Back in 1982, the press didn't like it because as a modern bike, would you rather have this at double the price of a CB 750? No, I'd probably have had the Honda. But now as a classic bike, it's something else. The power is lovely, the riding position is extremely comfortable, and you get the vibe that you could get on this classic and ride around Europe without too many problems. It's extremely comfortable to ride, and I reckon it would be comfortable for the person on the back as well. Now, I'm not hammering it, but the Marzocchi shocks and the really spongy, lovely, glorious big seat are delectable, man.
Riding back to Cole Central, I can feel myself easing into it.
I guess you've got to make your own opinion. But whatever you say about it, it is a huge part of British motorcycling heritage.